I think let's just start, and if other people will join, it's fine. So, hello everyone. Very weird picture behind me, but that's also fine. It brings a little bit more fun to the topic because I think tiger is quite symbolic for our topic today, which is leadership. So, thank you a lot for joining. As I always say, I think it's really good when people dedicate part of their weekend to something like that, something which really contributes to their development or just to some portion of new knowledge. So today we have quite an interesting topic, as I think, because it's all about you. So you is in the focus, and it's all about leadership, which today in our world, it's quite important thing. It's quite a buzzword, everything which is around leaders, leadership skills, and how you can develop yourself and grow as a leader. So what we're going to look at today is, first of all, try to understand why we want to be leaders, what we think great leaders do, where the great leadership comes from, and then we will try to have a look what is the difference between management and leadership, and also we will try to have a look what are those behaviors, traits, and those capabilities which great leaders have, and how you as an individual can understand whether you have some of those and how you can develop yourself to become a greater leader one day. And if already today you think and believe you are a great leader, I believe it's always a room for improvement. So all of us can actually grow to some extent. So it will be still good to know how you can become even better. So let's start straight away. And just before we really go deeper into the topic of leadership, just a little bit about myself for people who joined us for the first time. So my name is Anna. I'm originally from Russia, from St. Petersburg. And this is where I did my first education. So I got a specialist degree from St. Petersburg State University in my home city. After that, I took a gap year, so I decided that I want to have some work experience. And I started in employer brand agency, and afterwards I also worked in recruitment agency. So I started straight away with HR, which you can see I still continue to do. So I discovered my passion for HR quite a long time ago, and I'm still consistent in my career choices. And while I was working for this gap year, I already knew that I'm going to apply for an education, for a master's degree, and this is where I decided that I will go and pursue a master's degree in Europe. And this is where you can see the great time of my life, MSPME program, which is one of Erasmus Mundus programs, and it's still there running in the list today as well. I think we have already edition 7 or 8, something like that. So I did my master's in 3 different countries, starting in Edinburgh, then we moved to Milan, and then to Umeå. So it was a great experience, and I think you all can relate to that this is something really amazing, something we will never forget. That's our Erasmus Mundus life. And my major was management and strategic management, actually in both of my degrees. And after graduation, I moved back to Russia, but I changed cities, so I moved to Moscow, and I joined a company called Unilever, which is a FMCG company. So we produce different consumer goods. And I joined Unilever as a graduate trainee in HR as well. And I did a few roles inside HR, but also in other functions. So I did a stint in marketing, I did a stint in CD. And then within Unilever, I moved to London to my current role, which is a global talent manager. So I worked in both regional and, local and global roles. And I'm still continuing to be a global talent manager before probably moving to my other role next year. So let's see how it goes. And today, so I always have some purpose for my sessions. So today it's quite broad as a purpose, so it's not something super new or super simple. So it's quite generic, but also I think it's really relevant to the topic of leadership today. So I really hope I can inspire you to some extent to grow and to become better one day with the knowledge I will share today on leadership side. And just a little bit of rules for my session. So we have a small group, but I really don't want it to be just a monologue from my side. I really want you to share your ideas, answer some questions. So I will have some questions for you, very simple ones, I promise, nothing really personal, nothing complicated, nothing really provocative. So just participate in this conversation with me to make it more fun and interactive. So the first question I actually have a very important one. So I guess if you join today this presentation, to some extent at least, you believe that you want to be a leader, or you believe you are already a leader today. So I really want to understand some of your passions behind it. So why you think, why you believe that you want to be a leader one day, and why you want to know more about leadership. So just share some of your ideas. It should not be much. It should not be something really complicated as an essay, just a few lines. Okay, and I will just read it through while you're sharing. So we have one, which I think is really great to enable change and to guide, for example. That's really great. We have more. It's a good way to spend my own positive energy and to be involved in different things. Yes, absolutely. So I will also share from my side. Yes, for self-development, it's really key and it's good to have. So from my side, I think I want to be a leader because I think with going forward, I have something to share with the world. I have something, knowledge or skills or experience to share with other people. And I really want other people to grow and to benefit from this experience I had and to see them really developed. Yes, and as I said, that's a thing to do those days. Yes, so I think that's great. So you gave a really great direction to what you actually understand by leadership and what motivates you to become a great leader. And I agree with all of your points. Yeah, and we have one more, which is that it's all about working with others. It's not just managing others, and we will actually come to this point a little bit later. So let me just collect all your points, and I think that we will actually discuss all of them a bit in more details, and they are absolutely relevant for the discussions we have today. So you will see where we will come alive. So here comes actually another question, which is connected to the first one. What do you think great leaders do? So what kind of actions towards other people, towards the team, towards the followers really makes a great leaders? So what they do. And as some of you already started to compare leadership with management, you can actually continue connected with these kind of comparisons. So what maybe they do differently rather than just managers. Okay, great. So they inspire others. And I will put one more from my side because I'm very passionate about this one. Yeah, so they serve as role models. And I put that they develop others. If we think not about the team and others, if we think about, let's say, some company initiative or some just big initiative which we need to drive, so what leaders do when it comes to big initiatives, how they pull them forward. Yeah, so they bring innovation. Somebody before in an answer for the first question mentioned change, so they bring some change. They take risks, absolutely. So this is obviously much more than just managing some initiatives or just managing and giving some tasks. That's great. So here we go. So as some of you already spoiled a little bit, there is indeed a real difference between being a manager and being a great leader. So to start with, I think it's really important also to understand that it's nothing bad in being a manager. So actually some tasks and some moments of time requires really strong managerial skills. So sometimes being a manager is actually just enough. But leader is something which is really more. So the leader, and I see more suggestions coming through. So first of all, the list which is on the slide is really not the full one. So it's just some of ideas more to give you a sense of comparison, what leaders do while managers don't. So when we look at the management in a classic way, so management was always all around just organizing, controlling, planning, and motivating the teams. And it's more, if we look at the management as one of the leadership styles, actually, it will be extreme, which is very direct and very kind of focused on the tasks and focus on the processes. And it's always focused on when and how. That's why we organize, control, we plan to give people the sense of when and how and what they need to do. And it's about being really direct and just informing other people. And it's just about doing things right. So just about pushing through the task, pushing through the processes, and to make it done. That's the focus of management. Again, this is nothing bad about it. Sometimes it's really helpful, especially when there is a time pressure, where some task is really defined already, so it's not something new, it's not about change. The managerial skills will actually help you. So it's not something to give up, just to be clear. When it comes to management, and here to leadership, sorry, this is where I will talk through, and I will also collect some of your points, because I think you did really great. So when we look at the leadership side, it's almost doing the same kind of things, but it's the how of doing things which is really different. So if we look even at the same tasks and initiatives, what leaders will do, they will not just organize and control, they will actually just engage others, so others can actually organize themselves because they feel engaged and they feel being a part of the team or a part of the project. They will not necessarily strictly control other people, but they will really give people time and space to come with ideas, to come with their point of views, to come with how actually people want to make it done. So it's really giving the space for others. And from engagement and empowerment, this is where we see actually how development comes to life. So it's actually really easier to develop somebody if you empower them and engage, rather than you just organize, control, and give closed tasks and plan everything for them. Again, as some of you already mentioned, it's all about inspiring others. So it's not just motivating, and we know back in times management understanding of motivation was pretty much connected just to monetary benefits. So inspiration, of course, it's much more than that. It's really just sometimes even giving this inspiration almost out of nothing. So even then, no particular benefits are there. People really feel inspired and people really want to do something for you. This makes you a great leader. As I said, it's all about development, and some of you said it's all about taking risks. So with taking risks come actually also accepting responsibilities. So yes, leaders are usually really responsible, especially when they take risks and then they making some changes and pushing through some changes. And it's really about accepting praise and blame. So leaders usually never push the blame and blame somebody else because they feel responsible for things they do and for things they drive. So they are ready to not just take a risk, but also take responsibilities and blames. And it's all about people. So people is always a focus of leadership, while in management, processes and tasks are more in the focus. And the focus of leadership is always around why and what. This is why leaders usually engage and empower and inspire, and they usually do it by setting a vision, setting some bright future ahead, really sharing their purpose with other people so others can relate to it and not just see some small tasks to do and to work on. And leadership, as we're saying, is all about doing right things. So not just making things right, but actually doing right things. And this is where the change part comes from. So it's not just about maintaining the status quo and doing what you need to do and making others to help you. It's also about questioning, about bringing change, and really trying to make right things. So you can see actually those a little bit as two extremes. So as I said, both are really useful and both is good to have and good to develop. So you will see the situations in your life when you need to be a good manager. You will also really benefit in many situations in your life when you are a leader. And as I explain it usually for myself, for me, leadership is all becomes really more important as you grow. So as you grow, as your project and initiatives you drive become bigger, and also as the timeline really grows from tactical to strategic, and also while environment grows from really certain and kind of closed and simple to complex and uncertain, this is where the leadership skills comes into play and becomes much more important. So with this done, and I think you have a really good understanding of this, here comes quite a tricky question. So, and there is no really right answer to this one. Do you believe that leaders are born or made? So is leadership something kind of a raw talent, which you just have? Is it something about just natural capabilities we are born with? Or it's actually a result of hard work, and all of us can become leaders one day if we really work hard on ourselves? So if you are team born, you can just put B. If you're team made, you can just put M. And we will see the dynamics in our small group. Okay, so we have believe that born, and you can also just put a small explanation why you think this way. Okay, so we have also 13, which thinks that it's actually a little bit of both. With a nice explanation that indeed you need to have some opportunities where you learn how to be a leader. So you learn from some experience you have. Great. So anyone believes that leaders are just made? Okay, cool. So we have a really nice representation. That's really great. So I will share my views. So I used to believe for a really long time, I think, that leaders are just born. So I think it comes back in time when I was maybe not that confident about myself, or I just seen people who are just really strong leaders from the very beginning, and I haven't really seen much of evolution of people who were not born as strong leaders, but became strong leaders one day. But I think today I really believe that leaders, I think it's both. So I think some leaders are really born. So I think the history shows us that some leaders, they just been born this way. Some leaders also born with a really strong vision and purpose in their life. And we have examples of those. But some leaders are really made through tough experiences in their life, through some changes in their life, also through some experiences, projects, and other people who really made them grow and evolve as leaders. So I believe it's both. What I just believe is that, and here people who love some maths and who love some data will be probably happy. So I believe there is something as a curve. So there are some small percentage of people, like relatively small one, who will never probably be leaders. But I think it's also those who actually never even wanted to be leaders in the first place. So they might not really have those capabilities and this kind of talent, but they also don't really have any kind of interest toward being leaders. There is also a relatively small amount of people who were just born as leaders. They were just born smart, bright, and really great leaders. So this group also exists, and this is and there is some really big group in between, which has talent to some extent, but also they really need to work on themselves and on their leadership skills to become even greater. And I think it's very kind of individual exercise. So I think each of us has some capacity to grow. Probably the kind of size of this capacity can be different. So I would not really say that all of us can become the same caliber of leader one day. But I think it's up to us to really discover how still much more we can grow. But we definitely can. And this is something what I believe really makes leaders in the 21st century. So leadership development, it's not a science, it's an art. So there are really a lot of models of leadership capabilities and leadership behavior traits which exist. So I decided not really to make it heavy for you and not really present any kind of specific model, also not to advertise one particular one. But what I decided to put together is kind of things and traits I see being mentioned in many different leadership models, in many different leadership assessments, also what I hear from different companies, what I also hear from different leaders who talk about how to become a great leader one day. Those are the things I think each of us needs at least to think about one day when it comes to ourselves, and to find some room for improvement if we want to be a great leaders. I'm going to go through almost all of them now in a bit more details, and if you will have some questions, just write them and I will take them afterwards. So first of all, as we said, that some leaders are just kind of born being more leaders than others. So there is this kind of genuine belief that it comes to IQ and it also comes to emotional intelligence. So those two, it was a strong belief throughout the years as those two you can just test and you will get some kind of result, and you can't really change this result that much. There is also a lot of studies that actually you can, and actually there is a lot of proof, and we see a lot of situations where people IQ score changes over time, and what I personally believe that EQ score actually really changes over time. So again, this is constant to some extent, but it's also something you can develop to some extent. And it is important because IQ basically defines your I would not put it as mental capabilities because it sounds very harsh, but it defines to some extent how you think, how smart you are, how fast you absorb the information. So this is IQ, and I think this is something we all know, and I think tried, maybe some of you tried it one day to test. EQ is something which became more in the center of attention, going from past to today and also looking into the future. So we say that today the world, it really requires a lot of people interactions, also being really responsive to other people, paying attention and caring about other people in all the things we do becomes really important. So this is where EQ became something really important for leaders to have. And when we talk about EQ, we actually mean both a little bit of focus on how good you understand yourself and your strengths and limitations, but much more how you can really read other people, how you can understand other people's emotions, how you can understand their ways of working, and how you can adjust yourself to really influence other people in the right way, but also to really build strong and nice relationship with other people in all the things you do. And this is obviously, just from definition, a really important thing from a leader, because leader is nothing without the followers, but to have a followers, you really need people to believe in you, you really need people to support you, and for this you really need to have a strong EQ to be able to recognize their emotions, their needs, and also support them in the right way. So those are two, but that's not the only ones. So one thing which becomes really important for 21st century, it is actually the purpose. So there is a concept of purpose-driven leadership, which is all about that great leaders. So we looked at the great leaders and we say that great leaders know why they're waking up each day. They know the reason behind their leadership. So they know the why behind why they wanted to be leaders. And this is all can be put together nicely as their leadership purpose. And the interest towards purpose became really heavy because it was proven that people who have a purpose in life actually performs better, and they actually grow faster, and they actually feel happier. So purpose might be really kind of big word for some of you. So it really makes sense for people who are really senior and who already been leaders for many years. It absolutely makes sense for those. And also it makes sense for people who really, I don't know, are CEOs of great big companies. It really, or they are really publicly known and they do some big things in their life. But also I encourage you to see purpose more in line with kind of just interests, motivations you have, some passions behind the things you do. All of these can to some extent be described as your purpose. So purpose is actually a tricky one because it's not something you can just discover overnight. So usually it really requires a lot of different experiences, also both positive and negative ones, to discover your purpose. But what I encourage you to do, if you think and you're really concerned about your development and about your leadership journey, just at least to give it a try and reflect from once in a while about what is your purpose, why you're actually doing what you're doing, whatever you do, working or studying or participating or leading in any kind of initiatives. What stands behind, like what is this why for you? Because once you can be able to really define your purpose, or at least your passions and motivations, it will be much easier for you to plan your development and to plan your career, or to plan any other things which comes to personal and professional development. And I will show you a bit later how you can do this and why it is important as a starting point. So connected to purpose also comes notions such as authenticity and also motivation to lead, and I also connected to all of those something called resilience. So those are all connected, and it's quite a lot in a logical way. So if you have a purpose actually make you, if you have a really strong purpose which differentiates you from others, it actually make you a very authentic leader. And we all know that it's not worth it just to try copy somebody else. So if you know somebody who's a great leader and you're just trying to adjust their style, it might not work for you because you are a different person. You have probably different strengths and you have probably different development areas. So you really need to try be an authentic leader, because authenticity is something people buy into really easily. So we like something which is different, we like something which is really genuine and sincere, and this all stands behind authenticity. So you need to be true to yourself in whatever you do, also when you're becoming a leader. As I said, motivation to lead, also something connected to purpose in my understanding, because if you have a purpose and you know why, it actually gives you the power to go and to continue. It really gives you extra motivation to be a leader and to lead others, also to lead yourself and to lead all of your initiatives. So, and as I said before, when we were discussing if leaders are born or made, motivation is really important part. So I can also give you the corporate perspective of leadership. So, for example, many companies, many big companies have something called as high potential programs or leadership development programs for people who we believe have high potential to move and to progress within organization. So usually in progressive organizations, the way how people are selected for those programs, they are nominated by their line managers, but then they are also tested against similar characteristics as you see on the slide to understand how they are doing currently in terms of those characteristics which are important for leaders. And then motivation is actually usually really important one. So you can be really a strong performer, you can bring really great results for a company, you can maybe bring great results for a team, but if you have zero interest in your progression, if you have zero interest and not a strong motivation to lead others, it's really hard for you actually to become a part of those programs, because motivation is the key, and people believe that if you are motivated, you will indeed learn and progress much faster. And I think it makes total sense. Resilience is important because our world is really, really unstable. So we know that things, unfortunately, like depression and anxiety and stress are really common today. And of course, as you said before, leaders work a lot with risks. Leaders work a lot with taking extra responsibilities, challenging status quo, really changing direction of things which are moving. Really, sometimes they need to make decisions which are hard to make. Of course, it all puts pressure on you as an individual. And this is where you can really start suffering from stress or depression and anxiety and other things. And this is something which can really break your motivation one day. This is why resilience is so important, because there is a belief that strong leaders are strong because they are not only can get us to success and get themselves to success, but they can really bounce back from disappointments. So they really never give up. And they have this resilience, which is actually again connected to their motivation and their purpose, because they always have some strong why behind them, which still keeps them going. So they know why they still need to continue, why they need to go back there and face the hard situation, and this makes them really resilient, and this gives them really competitive advantage comparing to other people who are not that strong. Next ones, I grouped together again the three of different behavior traits. So self-awareness is something which is really key if you want to develop yourself, because you can't really change anything when it comes to yourself and your behavior if you don't understand what is the problem. If you don't understand how well you're doing in any of behaviors or in any of things you need to do as a leader, you can't really start working on yourself. Just because to start working on yourself, you need right actions. So you need to have right prescriptions of things to do. And if you as an individual can't give yourself really a right diagnosis in terms of how well or bad you're doing, you can't really start the right treatment. So you can compare it really to the situation within the doctor and an individual. If you can't really understand what's the problem, and you can't really feel it yourself and believe that it's the case, you can't really work on it with the same level of efficiency. So self-awareness is always the key when it comes to learning, when it comes to progression, and when it comes to leadership development as well. So what we see that many people are actually, what holding them back is self-awareness. So they believe they're great, but if you ask other people, they're actually not. So one thing to really develop it, because it is absolutely developable, and you can work on it. So one important thing is to listen, because we're not alone. So you might believe you don't have a problem, and it's also fine, because it also kind of plays for your self-confidence, which is not bad. But if you listen to other people, they will be able to show you that actually the problem exists, and this is where you can start reflecting back to yourself and maybe understand one day that actually they are right. Feedback also really helpful when it comes to increasing your self-awareness. So you can do some really simple exercises, like let's say just mark yourself how you think you do something, and then ask 3 or 4 other people what they think. And if you see some real gaps, this means your self-awareness might not be that strong. And why it is important? Because the next important one is actually the learning agility. And learning agility is something which defines Hi. Can you hear me now? Okay, yes. So that was a great example how today technology can't support us in the best way, unfortunately. So, but I'm back so we can proceed. So just remind me, what was the last thing you can hear? Was it the learning agility one? Okay, great. So as I said, learning agility is something which really defines how fast we can learn, and because if you want to progress fast, you need to use all your opportunities to learn. But also what is really important here, because you might not really be able to work that much on the speed of your learning, especially you can if it comes to the things you are usually good at, but if it's something you are naturally just not as strong as in other things, so let's say some people have problems with math, you might not really be able to fix it that fast. But when it comes to leadership behaviors, this is something you can still fix. So learning agility in terms of learning some new behaviors might be actually something you can work on as well. And here what is really important to have, because this is already what some people don't have, is having this real curiosity for the new learning, really push yourself to learn throughout your life. This is something which can make your learning agility really strong, and this is something which will obviously be a benefit for you, because you will never stop learning. It means you will never stop progressing. And when we talk about decision making, this is obviously important, because yes, leadership is all about inspiration, it's all about engagement, but in the end, all leaders work on some kind of result. So for any kind of result, it's really important to make decisions. And as you see in the world, which is really complex, and some things are unclear, and when initiatives are really big and influenced by many things in internal and external environment, it is really hard to make decisions. So what we also look at, for example, when we look at our leadership capacities, we are trying to understand how fast people can make decisions, how effective they are in decision making, how they mix their judgment, their level of analysis, all the information they have, but also kind of just their gut feeling when they make decisions, to make those decisions in the right way. And this is also connected to the point of how they approach problems, complex problems as a leaders. So as I said, good thing, you can work on all of those. It takes a little bit of research, it takes a little bit of self-reflection, trying to understand what are maybe your blind spots, and also at the same time what are actually your strengths, which you already know you have. So for example, you might have a great self-awareness and you can start from there, but you might not really be able to define your purpose so far, but it's fine, because again, it takes a lot of time to define it. But if you can start thinking on this, this might be something which can really give you competitive advantage going forward. And here is actually a little bit of structure how you can do it. So there is something called leadership development plan. In a HR space and in leadership development space, there are also similar concepts of individual development plan. And this is how usually many organizations just recommend you to focus on your development. And this is something I just tried to make a bit shorter and a bit clearer, not that complex as it might be, to give you kind of a starting point. Because of course, when it comes to leadership development and personal development, it's not just a 5-minute exercise. It's not something you can really do in 5 minutes and then here we go, you have a plan, you put it in front of your eyes, and every time you wake up you see it. It really requires constant efforts, it requires revisiting it, it requires some real dedication, because we're usually really excited to start doing something like that for the first time, but then they never come back to it again. And this is exactly not how we can really plan our development and see the progress. So to make it really easy, what you can do, and you can really just start with self-reflection, and then the next point you can just start with some feedback from other people you know, for example, from people you work with. And this is absolutely relevant to anything you do. So it's actually relevant both to your professional part, so it's relevant to progressing in your career. It might be relevant for your studies or for any other projects you participate in. it can also even be relevant to something like your personal life. So anywhere, any space where you want to develop yourself, it's actually helpful. But I believe it's really helpful for career progression, for example. So it all starts with purpose, as I said, because it's really important to have a relevant development plan, and it's really hard to have a great development plan and also have a motivation to really plan your development if you don't really know why you want to develop yourself, if you don't really know why you actually do what you do, why you actually want to become a leader, why you even motivated, and stuff like that. So as a starting point, it's always important to understand, first of all, what you like to do. So what really gives you motivation, and what you're passionate about, and what kind of impact you might have. And yes, as some of you spotted out, I try to make comparison to how you plan a trip. So when you plan a trip, you first of all, you just want to travel, right? So it all starts with your desire, but you also kind of, your desire can also be limited to some extent. So for example, you can be just up for, I don't know, kind of traveling for tourists, but you might not be up to some extreme traveling or some sports traveling. So you really need to define a little bit what makes traveling interesting for you in the first place. Is it just leisure? Is it, I don't know, countries with sun? Or is it something else? Or do you like to travel because you just like to move? Or do you like to travel because you like to learn? So it all starts there. And this is how you can start defining your interests and your purpose. Why it's also nice to have, because I mean, life is moving really fast, so it's actually really easy to get sidetracked. So it's really easy. Some of us might experience it when we started our education. So for example, I know many people who've been influenced by their parents when they went for their first degree. So this is not where they ask themselves, okay, what I like to do, what are my real interests, what I was doing really bad or good when I was at school, and this is how they define their education. They haven't done it, so they've been just pushed to another choice, and this is where it might be a positive experience, but it might also be that at some point of time in your life you will understand that actually if you really ask yourself about your interests and what you actually want to do in this life and what you want to achieve, you are now doing something completely different. So this is kind of a nasty exercise, because you might come up to conclusions which will make you sad. So I made it several times, and actually sometimes, depending on kind of point of life where I've been and kind of the roles I was doing, because I was doing it for my career development, I find myself a little bit unsure about if I'm moving in the right direction. But it's also a good sign, because this is where you can actually really turn it around and try to influence the things you actually want to do. So all of those things, if you define them in the right way, if you will really have something you like to do and always keep it in your focus, you will see that it gives you extra motivation, it gives you extra resilience. And what you also need to start doing, you need to, of course, once you decide that you want to make it happen, so you will need to look for any opportunities to actually bring this to life. But it's just good to have it as a reminder. So as a second point, so you defined, let's say that you really have a desire to travel. When what you do, you really start setting some destination points. So as I said, you might really want to go, I don't know, to Europe, but you might not really be interested at all to go to Asia. Actually, maybe you will just hate it because you're just like this and you have your own reasons. So you need to understand your potential and also your limitations. So what are those things you believe you really want to experience in your life? And you also need to really be strong when it comes to things you actually don't want to experience in your life. It is important, I always give some examples from career. It is important because inside the companies, it's always kind of a joint decision. So it's actually sometimes, when it comes to the future roles, for example, in the same space, sometimes it's up to you and you define where you want to go. And it's amazing experience when it goes this way, but sometimes also the circumstances define where you will go. The same can happen, for example, in your career or anywhere else. And that's important to understand kind of some possible trade-offs for you, but some things which you believe really will take you to the wrong place. and we all want to be in our bright spot. We all want to be shining in what we do. So it's really important to understand that maybe if we strongly believe that some experience is just not right for us, we need to remember about it, and we need to have our explanations why this will be the right way, and maybe we should be strong and not doing it. So here inside I have some simple questions you can start from. So whatever you define as your kind of development need, or once you define what you really want to do in your life and where you want to have an impact, you need to understand what experiences will help you to create this impact, and what experiences will help you to bring your passions to life. Whenever it is work or something else, you might be able to do this. But as I said, it's always kind of both ways. So it's not just about you being true to your interests and kind of trying to sort out the right experience for you. If it's, for example, about your career in companies, it's also then about where you can make a real difference. So it's about selling your interests to some extent, and telling, let's say, the company that you believe that you are the right for XYZ roles because you have something to bring there, and because this something actually really strongly relates to your purpose, to your interests, and you will be super motivated to do this because you believe it will make you grow, but it will also be beneficial for the company. Same kind of logic you can apply outside work as well. And this is also where you can define, and you should, how fast and how far you actually want to go. And as I said, again, with comparison to destination points, you might want to do also, 5 trips per month, but you might really believe that this is something which will make you absolutely tired and exhausted, and this will, in the end, make your experience just horrible. So this is up to you how you define the speed of your going, and also how far you can go. So if we take it back to the example of career progression, you're the one who can really define, are you ready to be stretched, to move really fast and to grow vertically, or you really don't want to be stretched, it will really give you extra stress, or maybe you have some other priorities in your life, let's say family or something else, or you something is just more important for you than career progression. This is what you also need to define here. And this is where in practical way, you will create something like ABC. So some of the destination points for you in terms of how you want to progress as a leader or as an individual. And this is where you can also, just define how fast you will move between those ABC. And you can constantly revisit it, because of course it's kind of very high level. This is something where you just bring a little bit of your ideas and some explanation behind it. So for example, again, for company context, it can be that you just defined, okay, I want to do role A, then I want to do role B in 2 years and role C in 5 years. But of course, situations can be different. You might then experience with time that you're not able to grow that fast, or maybe roles that you defined do not exist anymore in the company. So I would suggest keep it more on kind of experience. Don't make it too close. It's more about kind of different things to have in your life for your own good, rather than to make it as a really, really close tasks for yourself. And a good thing, you can actually change it as often as you want, but just make sure that if this is something you discuss with other people and you want to align them, make sure that every time you change it, you actually also at least inform them that this is happening and that you change your mind. And the third part of this journey is actually very important. So this is where you can actually start really making some to-do list for yourself in terms of how you will actually then get those experiences in your life. And this is all about purely planning your development. So the way you can plan your development, again, just 3 simple questions I left for you. Kind of, okay, what are the things I need to work on to get those experiences? So for example, I think this is something we all done when we were applying for our masters or our PhDs. You just, you start with your purpose. You might be really determined, and I think all of us had a really strong interest to get some international experience because we were motivated to grow, we were motivated to study, and we were really passionate about international environment. We said that. When we defined kind of our potential limitations, this was where we were defining the countries we ideally want to go for, and also the specific programs we would really like to go for, because we believed both that we want this experience in our life, and also that we have some skills and some capabilities to bring to the table. And the third part, which is planning the development, was about us actually applying and understanding, okay, what actually makes me a really good person to really get these opportunities when comparing to others. And if we were planning our applications on early stage, this is where we might not be prepared yet, but this is where we identified really what kind of things we need to work on to be able to progress. So for example, it could be English knowledge of English, it could be maybe some extra nice feedback from other people, it could be maybe a few lines of work experience prior to joining the programs. So this is where you just honestly identify your strengths and your development areas. What is important here, whatever you plan your development, even if it's like for super big and long-term perspective, or it's for something really small, always keep it short. So never make a plan, development plan. First of all, don't really try to make it for 5 or 10 years ahead, because things are changing too fast. You can try to set purpose for like 10 years if you're really sure about it and your interests. You can try to set kind of desired experiences for around 5 years or so, if you're also sure. But plan your development really in a small steps, and also always keep things you work on up to 3 maximum. Because if you have a list, in practical terms, if you have a list of 10 things to work on throughout 1 year, it will just drive you nuts. You will probably just lose motivation at some point of time. So what we see and what we think is really efficient is just keep it up to 3. 3 is a nice number. 3 is also kind of easy to tackle, but also it's not just 1. So it still gives you something to work on. And also always keep it both strengths and development areas, because again, why would you like to have just a list of your gaps to work on? All of us have some strengths to leverage, and you should really leverage your strengths. So if you just work on things where you believe you're really bad, you will develop yourself, but you will develop yourself to a very average person. So leverage your strengths as much as you can. And then you define how you can actually develop those things you identified. And this is where you can see, okay, maybe in what you're already doing today, you can do some things which will really help you to develop. Maybe there are some opportunities, maybe there are some courses. If you define something like, let's say, leadership skills or some technical skills to develop, you might find some courses helpful, but also some day-to-day experience, which brings you really usually up to 70% of your development. And also, a very important one, from what people you actually want to learn, because it's always a mix. It's always some particular courses to do. It's always some, or like books to read. There is always then day-to-day experience, which really brings you most of your knowledge. And there is also the great element of other people helping you, be it your line manager, or be it somebody like your mentor, or some of your friends who you think really influences your development. So any people who can help you to learn will be really relevant at this point of time. So this is a really, it's not a short exercise, to be honest. So if you try to do it for the first time, you might be quite confused. I tried it, I think, in my career. For my professional development, I tried it like 5 times. I was still confused. So it's really take your time. It's not easy. You can, of course, just put extra questions for yourself. You can, you will see it's easier when you understand specific goal, what you actually want to do it for. But for leadership development, it's especially great, and like for your professional development as well. So really encourage you to try. You can say how it's working or not. You can actually also ask me some questions, and I might be able to give you more examples or more details about how you can do some things, or how you might be able to test how you're good or bad in some strengths and development areas, especially when it comes to soft skills or leadership. But that's mostly it. So it looks quite simple. It's not that simple, but it's up to you to keep it really cool as well. And to close this webinar, I have a really nice quote. So what is said that leader is somebody who demonstrates what's possible. So I really encourage you, first of all, to believe that leaders are made to a great extent, and that all of you can actually develop yourself and also develop others to be a greater leaders and a stronger leaders. And I really encourage you to show the world what is possible from your side. Thank you a lot for being here today. And just if you have any more questions to ask right now, I will be happy to have some extra discussion on those. So any questions? Yes, so this is a question, I think, coming from somebody who could not join us, unfortunately, in the very beginning. So we indeed had a conversation whether leadership is inborn or you can learn it. So we ended up with conclusion that it is both. So you will be born with some of the leadership traits, but none of us is born like as absolutely a perfect leader anyway. So some of the things you can still develop to a great extent. So I encourage you to stay positive and believe that it is actually learned to a great extent as far as you really want to learn. So the program I mentioned, so it is in general, it's called the high potential programs. So this is something the big companies usually have, usually in corporate sector. That's the internal programs to develop leaders within the organization, and it starts with the assessment of leadership potential. So this is where they look in different ways on the points we discussed, like different behavior traits, and then they try to understand who has this bigger leadership potential, identify those people, and then put them on different development courses to build the stronger leaders. And this is like quite common, actually. It's now being adopted in small organizations. It just depends how they run it. It should not be also that complex. So what temperaments make the best leadership? So actually when it comes to temperaments, because temperament is actually something we are born with, this is not something we can control it, but we can't really change it that much. It comes to our personalities. I don't think there is an answer what makes the best leadership, because today there is indeed a really huge demand for diversity. So I believe, I am a strong believer that leaders should be diverse, and I'm a strong believer that every time we think that great leaders are usually extroverted and very kind of all out there, super passionate and quite of loud ones, for example, I believe it's just a common bias. Maybe majority of leaders are this way, but actually it doesn't mean that if you are very quiet or introverted or you're not naturally charismatic, you can't be a great leader. You can be a great leader if you identify other points of leadership which you can leverage, and you can be a great leader because of those. So yes, I can elaborate on what exactly. Yes, I believe that introverted leaders are great. So for example, I don't like to make it personal, but I'm an introvert. So I ran the test several times. I'm an introvert, but introversion or extroversion only defines where you take your energy from. And it's absolutely fine. You can still take most of your energy from within, but it doesn't mean you can't still share the energy with others, and it doesn't mean you can't be a great leader. Also, for example, what usually extroversion or introversion leverages is some things like drive, so how passionately you engage our people, and also how you influence our people. But you actually can be a really strong leader if you're more stronger on, let's say, judgment part, like your decision making, your risk taking, your resilience. So you can be an introvert and be really strong in those. So then it's just a little bit of different balance which different leaders will have, but it doesn't matter. I would say sometimes what we see that it depends what exactly you're leading. So what we will see indeed that maybe for some organizations, let's say they have some particular kind of profile of a leader, which works for them, but it doesn't mean that absolutely the same profile will work for others. So there might be companies which will believe that kind of leadership by through judgment is really good for them, and there might be some other spheres in this life where we will say that drive is super important and more important. So it's all about this mix. But I think it doesn't mean you need to be great in all of those, and it absolutely doesn't mean if you have some specific temperament, you can never be a leader. Yeah, the program for companies. Well, so I can give you examples. So I was a part of the program which was for people who are growing from specialists to managers, and the biggest part of the program is focused on developing leadership skills. So just usually the way it works, it is mostly focused on the things we discussed today. So for example, each company will just define some characteristics which the company believes are important for leaders. Most of them will be just very common based on what we discussed today. So like how you can engage other people, how you can really understand other people, how you can be more focused on people. And what you will do as participants, you will just be involved in different kind of simulations or interactions. So for example, you will run a few self-assessments to understand what is your leadership style. Are you more direct? Are you more people-focused? Are you more kind of leading everything yourself, or are you more involving others? So different kind of assessments. There are hundreds of those. Then there might be some tasks about effective communication, also trying to understand others, some tasks around coaching, so how you can help others to develop, and things like that. There are really many different options of those, but I think it's also not very only common in corporate sector. So some of exercises how you can work on leadership skills or understand your leadership style, you can even find it in the internet. I think, I think indeed leaders ask a lot of questions. So maybe it's not, I think it's about the right balance. So you can't, it depends when asking questions is really good and when you just ask a lot of questions just because you don't understand for the first time, for the second time, for the third time, and etc. But I would say it in a way that leaders ask the right questions. So I think they do, because we're talking a lot about leaders bringing change to life. And to bring change to life, you indeed need to question a lot of things. Also, to really bring the best out of people, you need to ask a lot of things. So, for example, coaching is based a lot on just asking questions to other people. So they give you the good answers and they can develop themselves. So I think they do. And I think what leaders are good at, they are not afraid of asking questions. Because also that's what made them, that's what really stands for their learning agility. You can't be really passionate for learning and you can't be really 100% agile if you're not asking questions, if you're not curious. I think, so what I will advise for leadership development plan, because if you have a look at it again, the first part, the starting part, is all about yourself. I think this one is important to just take your time and do it alone. Also because as a starting point, you would not want other people to really influence it, because I think I treat it usually as very personal. So this is something you need to define yourself. As a second step, you can really discuss it and it will be really beneficial, because it depends for what you're doing it. But for example, for professional development, it indeed will be really helpful to discuss the step 2 and step 3 with somebody like a mentor. Or if you don't have a mentor, any helpful friend, or I would say a friend or somebody who really knows you well and who can be really honest with you in terms of your blind spots. Because this plan, it works when it captures the things you're also really not good at. and you need to be able to spot those. So if you believe you sometimes praise yourself too much, or otherwise you really judge yourself too much, and you can't really come up with your strengths, ask somebody to help you who can bring the different perspective, and you who can really kind of make some sense check as well. Mentor is great for the second part to really suggest on kind of how fast you can go and how far, especially when it comes to career development. Mentors are really good also to suggest the right experiences, because sometimes, for example, when we think about our professional development, sometimes we just operate within the information we have and we know. So we think about experiences we just know and we think they might be good. But mentors are the ones who usually open some new perspectives, and they bring some new experience to the table, and they can really explain why those will be the better ones. So I had a mentor, and I indeed discussed with my mentor and also with my line managers those kind of things, and I would say it's really helpful. So for points 2 and 3, you need to discuss it with somebody. That's a hard question, to be honest. What's the most pressing leadership problem? So maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm focused on this too much nowadays in terms of the things I work on and the things I do. But I think that indeed having a purpose and also being resilient is really a challenge today, because you see the world is really unstable. It puts a lot of stress on leaders as well, because if you just have a look on many companies and many industries, how the world operates, we live during the really huge change, positive and negative ones as well. And what we really see that with our new generations, the need for meaningful work, for example, and the need for really having a purpose and really being motivated and interested in everything we do is really strong. So I think it's really hard to be a leader today if you don't have a purpose, or if you're leading the things which do not resonate personally with you. This is where I see many leaders breaking up today, because they realize they are leaders, but they're doing and leading the things they don't want to lead. This can be really harsh sometimes. And resilience as well, because we just see how easy it is actually to get stressed, both at work and at personal life, being influenced by different circumstances. So I think resilience, like really keeping this high level of resilience, is hard today. So I can't say I know many people who are really resilient today. I think for me this will be the challenge. I think that's again, I think each leader will have a different answer to this one. But I think that, so first of all, it's important when it comes to failures, I think it's important to accept the failure, because each failure brings some kind of perspective for the future learning. So the faster you accept that the failure happened, the faster you will be able to analyze it. And I think really learning from the failures is something which is beneficial for all the leaders, because failures are definitely something which always contributes towards both our resilience, of course, because every time we're bouncing back from failure, we are stronger. That's just well known. And it also every time contributes toward our self-awareness, because the more we reflect on the failure, the more we understand what went wrong, and the more we really have this learning within ourselves in terms of how we can actually maybe prevent it going forward. So I think that might help. So really learning, constantly working on resilience even before some failures happens really helps. So, and constant working on resilience just comes back to well-being. So how we actually treat ourselves in our daily life, how, even starting with how we eat, how we sleep, how focused we are, how we manage our emotions, all of these absolutely key to managing the failures. Having a strong purpose or the strong motivation behind things you do really helps as well. This comes to purpose. So purpose is actually it serves as a primary source of really high level of resilience. So if you know why you're doing things, you're fine. You will fail once, but you will continue. So look at the sportsmen, for examples. They are all sportsmen are really great example of how you are not giving up after the failures, because I think sportsmen are really resilient and they also are really motivated. So they really had a purpose of being successful in what they do. It helps them to bounce back from disappointments. I think support also is something we should not overestimate. So look at many leaders. Most of leaders have some really good followers. So some advisors, some one person who really helps them and keeps them motivated, or just some followers who actually gives them strengths. So I think all of those things can help. And from all the characteristics on the slide, and maybe some others which are not here, can I also ask you what you think is the hardest actually to work on? What do you think is really hard to get, or hard actually to progress in? Yeah, it actually, I find it a fun exercise, because every time, though I know those ones, every time I revisit them, I have a different view, probably depending on how confident I feel about some of those. Yeah, and it changes, exactly. So, for example, um, I used to think that emotional intelligence is something which is hard to get, especially if you was not born really as a kind of very people person. But now I don't think this way. I think it's easier, relatively. What keeps me really thinking today is how you can actually define your purpose, even if it's not as big, like not just really purpose, but maybe some really strong interest and some really aspirations you're really confident in for, let's say, even 5 years. I find it hard to define it once and forever and really stick to it. Yeah, so I think actually every time you're trying to make some kind of assessment, it really helps, because every time, so I know that some people are scared of different assessments because they see it's like, okay, I will maybe score really bad and then people will take it into account. But I think assessments are really great, so treat it as a recipe uh, towards treating any kind of disease. So you can't really treat anything if you just Google it. The more really sophisticated information you can get, the better you can treat yourself when it comes to it. So I think any kind of assessment, honest feedback from whoever you know might be really helpful. And also just try to work on your self-awareness, because many of those things, at least understanding how strong you are in some of those, just comes from the strong self-awareness. So if you just give yourself a little bit of time, you don't need a lot of time on this. If you just think kind of, I don't know, every second day, at least for 10 minutes, about how you're doing, or maybe after you did something, how was it, good or bad, and what other people think and see, you might already get some really good insights. Yeah, because I think so. Don't put yourself into too much pressure. I think we're living in a very fast-changing world. I doubt that we all 100% conscious about our development, like each single minute of our life. So hopefully, if you define at least if you got a direction of your development right, then you will automatically develop yourself just because you do things which matters for you every day. But then to kind of always make this step back and just thinking and reflecting, you don't need to do it every day or every hour. But sometimes it really helps. Yes, we all postpone. So what really helps, for example, I mean, it's easier to do when you're in a company setting, because usually things like that, they are sometimes discussed in a certain point of time, at least once a year, but usually 2 times a year. And if you have a good mentor or good line manager, even more often. It's good then to know, if you discuss your development with somebody, for example, or even let's say with a friend, it helps when you just book time, like have some slot like for your own development, or for revisiting your development plan, even if it's just once a month or even once in 3 months, depending how many changes you make and how big are your areas for development. You are fine. I'm not working on this every day for sure. So, but just once in a while, it is helpful. Well, I think we all, maybe not all, I also take failures really personal. I do. I think it's not bad. Treat it in a way that you care. So it means you care about results. That's absolutely good. It's really bad when people don't care. So they don't care about failures. Because if you care, if you take it personally, it means it matters something for you. Just try to see what kind of influences your emotions. Try to work on your emotions, because it's also try to think about it in a way that, first of all, you don't need to take all the failures personally. So I used to take personally a lot of failures at work, but if you think about it in a way that it's just work, it's just still one part of your life, it helps, to be honest. And then try to put yourself in a very productive setting of thinking how you can actually learn from failure. The faster you will start thinking and analyzing the failure, the faster you will let kind of the personal and emotional side of it go, to be honest, because you will just not just reflecting heavily on it, but you will really analyze it in a way that may be helpful. Maybe just work a bit on your emotional well-being, because usually we take also personally the things when we are already not in a very good state. So for example, if something happened once, we're fine, but then something happens twice, 3 times, or we're just tired, we tend to be more emotional and take things more personally. So just look at it this way. Also, what helps for me is just kind of really training. I might not be helpful in this regards, because I'm more on the thinking side of things. So always, whatever I feel, I try to analyze and think about it first. So it might not work for everyone, but what helps for me is to kind of look at the failure in a way. Okay, what part of it is my fault, and what part of it I could not really influence. So, and I'm just trying to weigh what I actually did to prevent this from being a failure, and what I haven't done, and then also how much I could actually influence it. If there is still a way and a room to influence it further, just go for it straight away. If there is actually really nothing you can do, just find yourself a new challenge, and it will help, because it will be just a waste of your emotion. Absolutely, yeah. So as we discussed, though, leaders don't push blame on others or on situations, but again, it's an exercise for your self-awareness. So try to understand what part of the failure was yours, but still, if it was yours, take it into the learning. Just take it into the learning straight away. Find some support from other people. Again, if you're a leader already, for example, you're never alone. We're all in a social setting. And I think it's very negative to think that nobody cares. So usually I found that people really care. If you are open to people and you are ready to support them when they had failures and they take them personally, people will be ready to help you as well. So again, you don't need to be in this alone. Yes, that's a good point. And I actually never mind if you also just want a presentation. So I send a presentation already if somebody wants the slides, or like if somebody wants PDF, I never mind to share it as well, because usually it's just mine based on whatever I think and feel today and yesterday. So you can even use it. So thank you a lot. I really enjoy being with you. I think we really progressed today to some kind of deep discussion and conversation about the topic. So I really like it. Yeah, and let's see. And if you have any great experiences to share, or something which works for you or doesn't work for you. So as I said, I'm really curious, and I also work in this space. So for me, anything which you find amazing from your personal perspective or professional perspective, any also things you experienced in your life as a part of your development journey, any kind of assessments or kind of simulations or plays, you are more than welcome to send me an email. We can discuss it. I'm always happy to take some tips and tips for the future as well. Yes. So just connect with the training team and we can take it from there. I can also answer any additional questions if you would have them later on. I will need to go in like 2 minutes. So I would just like to thank you all one more time. It was indeed a really great webinar. So thanks a lot. And I'm really pleased that actually I was talking only maybe for, let's say, half a bit more of it, and the rest we had a nice discussion. So that's really great. Thanks a lot, and really have a great Saturday ahead of you and a great weekend.